Welcome to Witchy Business, hosted by me, Emily.
And me, Anna. This is your weekly dose of friendly business chat with a witchy flair.
Through these personal and vulnerable conversations, we share our business journey with you,
highlighting the links to our overall growth journey in the hopes to make you feel more supported as you share your magic.
This episode is sponsored by Plan Her, a timeless and undated planner and journal created to help witches stay organised while in flow.
We especially love the pages for new moon manifestations and full moon reflections.
For additional support on how to harness the energy of the moon while working on your business,
subscribe to our Substack, your link in our show notes.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Witchy Business. Today we are chatting to Kate and we had the most beautiful conversation all about nature and we're just both feeling so inspired by it all. She also mentioned the book Braiding Sweetgrass, which is going to be part of our book club as well. And if you enjoyed this chat, then make sure you follow Kate for all her incredible recipes and tips. And yeah, we'll pop all of her links in the show notes. Enjoy.
Hi, Kate, and welcome to our podcast. Can you please introduce yourself however you want?
So I'm Kate, and I was reflecting on this when you said to me in advance, like ask me how I wanted to introduce myself, and so on paper I'm a maturation coach. I'm also trained to teach as a mindfulness coach and a forest school leader, and I have a bunch of other things that I've done that I feel like have got me to where I am, but aren't necessarily strictly related to all of that work. But they definitely got me here. But there's also, as you said it to me, I just listened to a podcast between Gabor Mate and Jay Shetty, which Anna you'd shared. Yeah. And Jay Shetty talks about how, and he's obviously done a few more things than I have, but he talks about how his mum feels far more defined by his purpose than his, like, an author or a podcaster, all of that. And I love that. So I feel like, I'm a mum, I'm a daughter, I'm a sister, I'm all of those things, but I'm also like, I'm driven by, when I introduce myself, I love the idea of like what I'm driven by, and for me that's really like a sense of connection and kind of stillness that comes with being outdoors with everything that nature has to offer us, and how that's also intertwined with learning more about who we are as people and how we interact with each other in the world and what we all really want in the world. So that kind of drives everything. That feels like it drives everything else that I've done, like the forest school, the maturation work, all of that is driven by this kind of desire for us to be like our wild, free selves, I suppose.
I love that.
Yeah, me too. I love the way...
wild, free self.
Yeah. I love the way that you put that as well. It's so beautifully put. It's like, it's kind of, someone once told me that a good, when you go to a party and everyone's like, so what do you do? And it's like straight to the work, it's straight to the title and like defining you by like, what you do. Instead of saying that, you ask something like, can you describe your perfect day? And I just love that. That's like stuck with me ever since. And I always try and do that because it tells you so much about that person rather than just their title. So
Exactly.
I love that. Yeah. So what's your perfect day, Kate?
Oh my God, my perfect day. Okay, this sounds fun. My perfect day for sure involves Actually, I really love getting up early. I was thinking, like, I do like to sleep, and I feel like I need to sleep a lot, but I love being up early. Like we were just saying before this morning about how beautiful the sun's out, the moon was incredible yesterday, and actually this morning. And so for me, being up early, like when there's just the stillness, and it's just like, no one's kind of gone on their like crazy busy days, and there's just, you can just feel it that no one's busying around yet. So getting up really early, watching the sunrise, probably sitting with my journal and a cup of like hot water for a while, just catching my thoughts, and being outdoors. Like I would go straight into being in the woods and moving my body in some way outside, creating something outside. Like if I could sit around, like we could make breakfast around a fire pit, that would be my dream breakfast. Like making, creating, and then just exploring, like spend the day like outdoors, just away from the busyness, the hustle, and just, yeah, some good food. A big pot. I have a vision in my mind of like a big pot of soup or stew, or like a big fire. That's my, like some Tampa bread on the fire. Yeah, and then sharing it with people, like for sure, like in part, like on my own, there were parts of my ideal day that I would want to be on my own, but also an element of also wanting to share that and like really like connect with people in some way, like creatively, or over food, or over like a cup of tea or some foraging or something, but like being, yeah.
That's so beautiful.
And then a bath.
I feel like my whole body just like dropped.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds delightful.
Yeah, you really painted that picture then. I can literally see it.
I'm there.
Yeah.
I'm around that fire. Oh.
Yeah, and I really do have the sense of like, it's so quite often in my life, like I'll be doing something and I'll be like, this is so weird. Like, why am I in a supermarket? Like, how did these buildings even, how does it even exist, and why? And like, why aren't I just picking these vegetables, these onions out of the ground? Why am I buying them? Or like, I don't know, like just, and it's that moment of like, why aren't I doing that now? Why aren't I having breakfast around the fire? Yeah,
let's go. Okay, bye. Thanks for listening.
Yeah.
What's your human design?
So I'm a projector. And so human design is something for me that I'm relatively new to. Like as soon as I started reading about it, I was like, oh my God, like this makes so much sense. So, and then I'm a 2/5. I don't know exactly what that means, but I resonate a lot with the projector part of it. And
yeah, because as you were describing your perfect day, I was like, yeah, that sums it up. And I didn't know you had the 2/5. I have a 2 in mine as well, and that's the hermit. So it's like we need that alone time. So yeah, everything you were saying is kind of speaks to that perfectly.
Yes, it really does. And for me, like it's like that, it was almost when I like the kind of permission of like, you know, I love being with people, and then there's a point when I'm just like, no, like enough, like, it's nothing to do with anything other than I just need that space. So like it's kind of permission to be like, okay, it's not me, it's not them, it's just like, now I just need to be a hermit for a little bit, and that's okay. So
yeah
love being a hermit.
Yeah.
Kate, I know a bit about this because we've trained together and been on courses together for a couple of years now. I would love for you to share more about your relationships with plants and with nature in general, and just because I Yeah, love for you to share that a little bit more.
Yes. So I grew up in the countryside. We had dogs and horses and chickens, and it was always just part of my life. And I always, like, if I feel back into my being a young girl, like that just felt so, it was just normal for me. It just felt, you know, I being outdoors and having that space just felt right. But I probably didn't, well, I didn't have the words for it, but I knew somehow instinctively that it was just part of just who I was. And I think if you speak to people who I went to school with or who've known me for a long time, like they always used to say, like, one day you'll just be like on a farm with chickens and like some ducks, and, you know, just that was really just who I am. And then somewhere along the way, like I got caught up in schoolwork and then go to university and the things that ticking all the boxes and, you know, all the things that we should do in order to get a job and, you know, be a human being. But it was always still there, but it sort of got sidelined, I suppose. And then this journey, and then since having my kids, but I've been on this kind of exploration of like, what is it that I really want, and what is it that I want to share with these little beings that I've just brought into the world. And so it's been like I would say quite slow, if I'm honest, like, you know, like remembering, I suppose, of like, this is like my essence, like this talks to me so much. And so I started off as the first thing I did was train as a hypnobirthing teacher, actually, which I didn't say at the beginning, but like the piece now that fits in, looking back on it, was this sense of like listening to yourself and your body, and like, you know, and then I ended up training to teach mindfulness, and we had this part in our classes that I delivered with kids of like creative section, like making little worry dolls and stuff, and I just couldn't bring myself to go in with like a bag of pipe cleaners and googly eyes, because I was like, these little things that these 6-year-olds are making aren't, with the best intention in the world, going to end up in the bin. And so I would go in with like sticks and like mud, and we would create stuff. And then I was like, oh my God, like, I'm not really interested in the rest of it. I mean, I was, but like, that was the bit that I was like, wow, like there's so much you can do, and just opened up this like world for me of like making, like, we can make our own ink, we can make our ink out of acorns, we can make it out of walnuts, we can like dye our own little fabrics, there's just so much and that's where like I find my flow, and just in this, like I could just be lost for hours in like playing with, like, I don't know, printing with oak leaves, or this, I mean, there's just so much. And so, yeah, that was kind of like a rediscovery for me. And I think there were a few people who were around me who were a bit like, kind of, I told you so, but like kind of happy to see me back in this like kind of more natural flowy state. And then a big moment, and this is interesting to share this with you, Anna, as well, because you were part of this as I read this book, this book Braiding Sweetgrass, and I was like, oh my God, okay, like this, and it talks about like, it's just this written by R.Kimmerer, who was a botanist, but also a member of or a descendant of these indigenous families, the Potawatomi Nation, and she basically kind of starts to bridge this gap between indigenous plant knowledge and like scientific, and she uses words like kind of like you know, this idea of the connection between all of us, between us and the plants, and how, you know, in a lot of indigenous cultures, plants are referred to as not as an it, but more like as a he or a she. Like it's a living being with this incredible ability to like photosynthesize and take some like carbon dioxide and some water and some sunshine and like make some food. Like that's amazing. And like, you know, but we live separate from that. We live so like as if, you know, in a categorized kind of way. Like we label a plant as an it, but it's so like 2D. And it spoke to me on a level of bringing the plants alive and the like nature alive, but also in terms of our relationships with each other, like in the connectedness between human beings and how connected we all are and how we live. Like, you know, when nature's in balance, it's like this big ecosystem, like that everything works. Like every plant, every animal, every entity has its role to play, and it might take a few hundred years, and it might, you know, things change and things evolve, but there's like an equilibrium, and that's the same for human beings. Like if we all have our magic to share, and if we all share it, then imagine how like balanced the world could be, not just like nature. But we kind of, you know, we need to control it, we need to manage it, we need to understand it and be like, no, this plant does this. And in one of, I can't remember where, I think it's in Braiding Sweetgrass, R.Kimmerer talks about how she went to university to study botany, and her question was, why do the goldenrods and the asters look so beautiful together? And they basically tend to grow similar. Like goldenrods are these amazing, vibrant golden yellow plants, and the asters like bright purple. And they were like, that's a question for like the art, like an art school. Or if you want to know why they go together, then you need to be an art school, not a science school. And she was like, well, actually, like there's a real like symbiosis. Like they work together for the soil, they work together because those two like opposing colors on the color wheel like attract different pollinators. And there's all these reasons how just, you know, there's just this incredible wisdom and incredible just living together. And like the aster's not like, my purple's better than your yellow. It's just like, wow, your yellow's cool, and so's my purple. And like, look, it's like you two. It's like Anna and Emily. Like, you know, you're the purple and the yellow together, but you're not. You know, you both bring something different, and that's I just think so. Yeah, that was the long version of how it. Yeah, there's loads I could say that.
Yeah. Why art school? Was that just because, what do you mean, like they were looking at it from more of like a well, I guess you said like the 2D, so really just kind of looking at it versus like understanding all of it.
Yeah, exactly. They were like, well, if you want to know why they look pretty together, then you know, that's not science.
But she wanted to know how they live together and
why they
grow together.
Yeah.
And like, I'm sure there's something, I don't know the details of it, but like, I'm sure there's something about how the roots grow together, that one will nourish one part of the soil and one will nourish another. So it is science, but it's also like, it's kind of, it's bringing like an intelligence, I suppose, to the plants, rather than just like, oh, isn't it a coincidence that we always see these plants together? Well, no, like there's a wisdom there and a kind of.
Yeah, wow. I was just thinking that really ties in like to so many things. It's like as well, a lot of people, they'll experience an emotion, for example, right? Like, and they'll be like, they'll just kind of top line see it and then push it away, rather than really diving in and understanding it. It's like instead of looking at the root, instead of looking at trying to understand all of it and where it came from, it's just like, oh, there it is, that's a bad emotion, or that's a good emotion, really kind of just like labeling it and then moving on.
Yeah, exactly. that there's something, it's like a curiousness, right? Like that there's something.
Yeah. And then inquiring into it, which is exactly what we do in maturation work.
Exactly. Yeah. But for me, it took the maturation work for me to get past so much of the conditioning. Like, I feel like I would have always had an appreciation of nature and enjoyed being outdoors and done a lot of this stuff. But it really took the maturation work for me to see kind of where I was getting in my own way of not allowing myself to really live it fully. And I think for me, the two are really beautifully intertwined, this idea of interconnectedness and the kind of the just that curiosity that you referred to, I suppose. But both, they know it.
Because it's
they both
like
go together.
It's like your understanding of the human condition through maturation helps you have a deeper appreciation of nature, which then when you're like truly in communion with nature helps you have a deeper understanding of the human condition.
Exactly.
And then you just like the two of them are so interlinked. It makes me think of this definition of, I think it's in the dictionary, like nature is defined as anything that is outside of the human being, like that is other than us. When, you know, it's we are nature and it's an extension of us. And we've forgotten that, like you said, and it's led us to how we see nature today as something to exploit, to use, or to just look at, rather than something to speak to, commune with, and exchange with, and understand, but not understand on that scientific level of, you know, it's just, I guess, more like learn to know, or makes me want to read that book again.
That's on my list. I've not read it yet.
Oh, it's beautiful. And have you there's a Netflix film called The Biggest Little Farm. Have you seen that?
No.
That is also really inspiring, because it's about it's basically this couple in the US who were like living their LA life, and then they got this dog who basically couldn't survive it. They just hated living in an apartment, and she'd always loved cooking and had this dream of creating that, where food comes from is so important, like the energetics of the food and the nutrition and all of it. And anyway, they've ended up creating this 200-acre farm in California with the help of some investors to basically farm in a really traditional way. As in that every part of the farm has a role to play. Like every creature has a role to play. And it was like with every problem they came up against, there was some kind of solution. Like they had this big infestation of snails, and they were like, the snails keep eating all the citrus fruits. We're going to have to, can we not just put down some kind of something to get rid of all these snails? I mean, there were thousands of them. And then they realized they had loads of ducks, and the ducks eat snails. So then they would put the ducks in the like citrus trees to eat the snails. And anyway, it just kind of was this like, basically like this balance between like everything kind of, but they had to listen. They were like this thing that just really came through with me, that we had to really listen, because on the face of it, we could just be like, oh, there's so many snails, I'm just getting the snail exterminator guy in to come and exterminate the snails. But they didn't. They were like, okay, so what is this? There's got to be something here that we're missing. And
which makes me think back again to how we humans deal with our emotions, like especially like there's this in the wellness world, like it's all about managing your emotions and how do you deal with them better, instead of just how can you be with them more and create more space for them, and move with all of that in like your own internal ecosystem, I guess.
Exactly, that it's telling you something. Like if there's a ton of snails, it's because you haven't there's something that's missing that's not there. Just like if you have a ton of anger or sadness, there's some need that's not being met. Like it's the same. It's just our minds just want to control it and understand it because it's scary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was wondering. Sorry, go ahead, Em.
No, you carry on.
For anyone who's listening and who feels suddenly listening to you, like realizes how disconnected they feel from nature. Do you have any tips or recommendations or like different places that they could start to come back to it?
Yes. I think that the thing I want to say is like get out in nature, but then at the same time I also really feel like, maybe this sounds a little bit vague, but like that we are nature anyway. Like you can be living in the city and you can go into the local park. You don't have to be in the like most rural part of wherever you live in order to feel this kind of connectedness. It's really, there's nature popping up all over the place. Like get into your local park and like, I can promise you that there'll be probably about 10 different plants that you can eat that you don't know about, or that you can create something with. So I suppose it's just starting to like notice that it's almost, you know, like that you can allow that feeling of like being part of something bigger to flow through you, like wherever you are, or whether you're in, like an urban park or a, you know, giant national park. And for me, actually, this time of year is a really beautiful time as well, because it's now when like there's a lot of spring plants starting to come up, and there's a lot of what we would generally class as like weeds that are pretty easily identifiable that you can start to notice. And once you notice like plantain, for example, which I can pretty much guarantee that anyone who's listening will have walked past it and seen it and maybe not known what it is, but it grows everywhere. And you can eat it, and it's a bit chewy, but you can eat it. And it's incredible for your skin. It's like if you have a bee sting or any kind of skin eczema or something, you can like chew it and rub it on a wound. You can make it into a salve. You can infuse it in oil. There are so many, there is so much that you can do. And I think I started like nettles, for example, like an incredible source for tea, making cakes with, so many plants that are just out there.
Oh, I love that. Just that it doesn't need to be big and huge, and that you can just start where you are, and it's just about bringing awareness back to nature. I find that like very achievable, you know. It's just start where you are, and
yeah, for sure. And it's almost like, it's kind of like a snowball. Like you kind of get a little bit of confidence, and you know, you need some good books. If you're talking about, if you're going to eat foods, you need some good books. You need obviously some people to help you to make sure you're identifying the right stuff. But there are some really simple, like things like nettles. Like there are some easy wins. And dyeing your, you know, find like a white t-shirt and heat some avocado stones in a pot, and you know, dye your t-shirt pink. Like I dyed a jumpsuit pink last week, and that kind of like, wow, like I can do this without, I don't have to go to a supermarket, buy loads of like chemical dyes and make it pink. Like I can, like, this just exists like in the world.
Yeah, it was such a nice color as well. I saw you posted it. It's so cool.
Yeah. I feel like I have to share this. So as people are starting to know. I grew up in the Pacific. We don't have nettles. Like on a tropical island, we don't have nettles. Kate's like, oh, I see where you're going. And I had heard that nettles sting, but I was like, you know, did I walk barefoot into like through a whole hedge of nettles, going to pick them like straight with my hands? Yeah. So to anyone listening, didn't grow up in the Northern Hemisphere, do not do that, because it really does.
Yeah.
Really uncomfortable, and it lasts for days.
Oh, were there any dock leaves?
So I went and then found that under nettles, there's another little leaf that grows that you can use to rub all over the nettle stings.
Yeah.
To help with it. So nature's like so smart. It gives you the, you know, the solution is right under there. So yeah, I did that and it helped. But days later, my skin was still itchy from nettles. So
yeah, that's yeah, that I can feel it as well. That's that's a lot. Like, yeah, why is that? Like, so yeah, like the dock leaves always grow like next to the nettles, but like why? Like, what's the purpose of that? So obviously, like, it helps with the sting. Yeah, for you, but like that is really clever. But why do they have sting in the first place if there's the cure next door?
Because, well, I suppose that if you're like a fox or something, well, I mean, I don't know if nettles sting foxes' mouths, but you're not going to eat the you're not going to eat the stingy nettle, are you? You're going to leave it to grow. That's why it stings. Like, stay away from me. But okay, if you're going to walk, if you're going to walk through barefoot because you didn't grow up with nettles, then here we go. I'll help you out here.
So is it like the little? Are they called dock leaves? Is that what you said? See, I'm learning here.
Yeah, so there are dock leaves, which is what we grew up with. Like, find a dock leaf, and we used to like strap them in like in our socks and everything to like cover our stung legs with to protect them.
Yeah,
that was just me.
So,
but there's also, but plantain is also a better one, like the like long stringy ones. If you chew that up and break that up, it is. I think it has a better effect, but like the dock leaf, everyone knows.
I should have called you, Kate.
Yeah. But how did you know that, Anna? Did you just like intuitively see a leaf and just like Google? How did you? Google. Oh, okay.
Because I was like, there's bound to. I mean, if nature stung, like, there's bound to be something in nature that's going to help me. Because I was on a van trip and it was like in the middle of nowhere, so. Yeah, I had reception, so Google helped, and it was and I wonder if those leaves grow under there because they don't have any protection. So like they're protected by the nettle. A bit like clownfish in the anemone. See, I know that kind of stuff, like the ocean. Yeah, the clownfish grow in the anemone, and they have a symbiosis and like a relationship together. So
yeah, it's like the three sisters. They don't sting, but it's like the corn, the beans, and the squash.
Yeah,
and they all grow at different levels in the soil, so it nourishes different parts of the soil. The squash plants shelter the beans from the hot sun in the summer, and the corn is the pole for the beans to grow up. And and I grew them last summer in our garden, and it's mind-blowing. Like, how did the beans know that there's a corn stalk over there? Like, all the beans are growing around the corn stalks, but
so smart.
Who told them?
they listen.
Wow.
They listen.
Yeah.
They listen. Exactly.
So wise.
We just look. But like nature listens, right? Like, and that's what we're not very good at.
Yeah. I love you sharing all of your recipes, and like you share on Instagram everything that you make, and I think it ties in really nicely to everything we're saying. It's like using nature as, you know, you're using what you find, you're creating stuff out of nature, and it ties into everything, like everything is connected. And can you share a little bit more about that and how you go about creating those recipes and what your favorite is? And yeah, this is like really speaking to me, this whole chat.
Most of to be honest, most of the recipes that I've used, there's an amazing, talking of nettles, there's an amazing nettle cake that I've made loads of times, which I follow a recipe by a girl called Fern Freud, who's Foraged by Fern, and she has incredible recipes. And anyway, her nettle cake is the best one that I've ever tried. So a lot of it's come from inspiration from other people sharing recipes, like Fern and other people on Instagram and online, and then it's really just been something that I've just been like, you know, someone told me that you could dye botanically with avocado, so then I started like following botanical dyers and seeing how, you know, what you could do and how to make the dye hold onto the fabric. Like there are certain botanical dyes that will naturally stain the fabric and hold the dye. Others you have to kind of like, but avocado you have to like soak it in a mordant, something to like help it absorb the color and the dye. And like, so it's really just been a case of like I'll learn one thing and then I'm like, oh, and then I bought a book about or like called The Organic Artist, about like how you can make paints from stones and like botanical crayons. And then it's like, okay, so you can make charcoal, like literally just if you're making a fire pit anyway, then there are certain sticks that you just put in a kind of mini kiln in the fire, and then they turn into charcoal. And like, well, it's like, well, yeah, charcoal isn't actually something that was just born in a shop. Like charcoal is a natural thing. And it's just, you know, these moments of like, okay, like, wow, you can really do that. And like, you know, like making pens out of sticks, like so simple, just to kind of carve the point of a stick into a kind of fountain pen shape, or just a point, and then just using some kind of ink or charcoal or paint or something to use it as like a kind of, as a form of ink. And it's slow, like it's rustic, it's, you know, like if I make ink out of charcoal, like you have to keep, you know, it's like having a quill, like you have to dip it every 2 seconds. You can't just, you know, it's not a friction pen that you can just keep writing with. But there's some real beauty for me in that, of just like, okay, so like, you know, this is how we did it in the old days. We just like, it just forces you to slow down. It's just like, wow, okay, like this is just yeah, I feel like how it should be. So I guess in answer to your question, like a kind of like a mix of different influences of people, you know, sharing things they've learned. And for me, the essence is like seeing how much we can create with nature, and how much, you know, rather than it necessarily being that, you know, we're going to make the perfect ink, like the ink will work and I'm not going to use it or share it if it doesn't work. But like, you know, I'm not going to set up an ink factory making acorn ink. Like, you know, it's about like exploring the different way, you know, just taking different influences and seeing how many different people have explored these different ways of making stuff.
Yeah, really, just you're just like following what lights you up and just experimenting. And I just love this so much. I feel like, can we do an art class in the forest and just
yes 100%. Oh my god. And and we can go and find some tea and like find some pine needles and make some really nourishing pine needle tea. And you know, this
this just has nourished me so much. Yeah, And I find it really inspiring to just go back into nature more. And when you speak of nature, to me, it's really like that more feminine energy of the woods and the forest and the earth, and I really feel that because I grew up by the ocean, and it's a lot more masculine. Like, you know, in New Caledonia we don't have waves, but it's still a very different energy when you're by the beach.
Yes.
Than when you're in the woods and in the forest, and it's like a different kind of holding that you feel when you're in the woods. And yeah, listening to you speak just makes me want to be with the plants more.
Yeah, it's so true. I love it's so true. It's a different, there's like a kind of, there's that like earthy kind of, it's like these big branch arms are kind of holding you in that kind of more feminine, as opposed to like there's a real strength to the ocean, right? Like the kind of, which is amazing too. Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much for this lovely, beautiful, heartwarming share. If people want to learn more about nature, where can they find you, follow you, learn more about you and what you do?
So I have Kate_Wild_Freedom on Instagram, and yeah, that's that's mostly where I share stuff. Online I do have a Facebook page as well, but that's new. So yeah, I would love share as much as I can, and if anyone wants to come and say hello.
We'll tag you in the show notes as well, so people can easily find you and learn more about nature with you. Thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you both. It's been really lovely. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for tuning in to your weekly dose of witchy business.
If you love us as much as we love us, please leave a 5-star review to help us spread the magic.
Thank you again to our sponsor, PlanHer. Please support them the way they support us.
And don't forget to follow the link in the show notes to sign up to our Substack. You can also watch us on YouTube. It's @Witchy Business.
And you can also follow us on Instagram @WeAreWitchyBusiness. Emily is @_Emily Tyson, and I am @Anna.Jordan with an E.